We are wrapping up our Family Matters series today. If you're like, oh, you're wrapping it up, I want to catch the other two. Great, they're on our website, oknewlife.com. Click on sermons and you can go there and catch those sermon videos there, just so you can kind of take everything all in together here. In those first couple weeks, we've really been looking at and talking about family, as in the family under our roof and the family under our household. We're going to shift it a little bit today and look at the family of New Life Assembly, because we are a family here. And matter of fact, our tagline here is Comfort Church, Leave Us Family. Some of you will be getting some t-shirts very shortly. They just got ordered this week. You're like, that took forever. I know, right? But on the front, it says Comfort Church, Leave Us Family, and on the back says OK New Life. So I have to, in this Family Matters series, talk about the church family. And to just, think about and consider how we can do better. How we can just really push forward as a church family. There's a story that I came across of a father who was sitting with his daughter. And I mean, he wasn't me. Like, he wasn't the greatest looking of guys, but maybe closer to Pastor Ricky. But so no, I'm just kidding. Not you though, Randy. Right? So yeah. If you don't know, Pastor Ricky and Randy are twins, so identical twins. So, but they're sitting, and the little girl says, "Daddy, did God make you?" He says, "Yeah, he did." "Daddy, did God make me?" "Yes, he did." And she just stopped for a second and said, "Looks like he's doing better work these days." But the honesty of children is mind-blowing sometimes. But that brutal openness from children to their parents would really be beneficial within the context of our church family. To just be honest with one another and to be open with one another, still respecting and still loving, but not trying to cover things up and not trying to hide things or whatever else, but to just be brutally open with that. Whenever it comes to growing a family, have you ever thought about what goes into that? Now listen, I am certainly not taking anything away from what women go through during labor. I've been there. I've seen it. I've been ordered out of the room before because apparently before your wife gets an epidural, you should eat breakfast so that you don't turn into Casper and almost faint and have some 110-pound nurse try to save you from hitting the ground. So I'm not taking anything away from what women go through, but I think that women who have given birth would say that the hard part is raising them. That was tough, and we knew that there was an end in sight, but then there's the raising them that has to happen. Galatians chapter 6 says, "So then, as we have opportunity, let us do good to everyone, and especially to those who are of the household of faith." The church is described as a family throughout scriptures. So I think that we need to look at this and say, how do we grow our church family? Well, very similar to two families that we have all been a part of, is that we have to start somewhere. There has to be that meeting of a man and a woman, and and then of course there's a plan of marriage and children, and sometimes that doesn't always follow according to plan, but God doesn't love them any less, and I don't love them any less, but we have to start somewhere there. And this church started somewhere as a family too. Started in the front yard of Barbara Metzger's house. On lawn chairs was where the family started. Man, imagine if we moved all these out, brought in 140 lawn chairs next Sunday. So imagine going through that. So we all have to start somewhere. But look, large or small, whatever it is, the church belongs to God. He just wants the church healthy. Now, I know that there's this old adage that, if a church isn't growing and growing, that it's not healthy. Well, I know that if I grow too much too fast, I won't be healthy. Say, well, you're growing. Yeah, but it doesn't mean I'm healthy. So it's not always this, growth and all of those things that mean health, but to be able to do it in an appropriate way and in a way that is honoring to God. In our text that we're going to be in here in a minute, in Matthew chapter 9, it's from the life of Christ that kind of gives us an idea of how to grow as a church family. Matthew chapter 9, verse 35. And just hang on with me, because some of you aren't going to be like, what's this have to do with family? But just stick with me. I promise I'll get there. Verse 35. Jesus went through all the towns and villages, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom, and healing every disease and sickness. So what matters for the growth of our New Life family is the method that we grow. That is what matters most, is the method that we grow. What's the method that Jesus showed us? Preaching, teaching, miracles. That's the method that Jesus told us right there. Preaching, teaching, and miracles. Trust me, there is a method for every situation that has ever worked out, okay? There is, many of us will say, there's a method to my madness. Just wait to see what happens. And sometimes I'm like, yeah, you're a whole lot madder than you think. But whatever that is, whether that's fishing, whether that's hunting, whether that's building, whether that's cleaning, whether that's shopping, I guess. There's a method to things that we do if we want to see them come out with a great and a good outcome. But what about the church? Is there any good method to see the church grow? When preacher Dwight L. Moody was criticized for his evangelistic methods, he replied, I like my way of doing it better than your way of not doing it. D.L. Moody was not afraid to tell the truth. He said, I like my way of evangelism and I like my way of doing this than your way of not doing anything. And that's why we shared that vision message to say everything that we do has got to point to the vision. It could be the greatest program in the world, but does it point to our vision? There has to be a method to that. Teaching, preaching, healings, those were the methods that Jesus used to reach people. Those were the methods that he used. And you know what? When he died and he rose and he ascended to heaven, it didn't stop. He didn't say, hey, wait until I get back to do that. Matter of fact, he said, continue to do that and you will do even greater things. So this method is still applicable to us today. We have to do that now. As we see these things begin to happen and as we see people become emboldened to be able to pray for people outside of these four walls, by the way, that's allowed, okay? We are allowed to pray with people outside of these four walls. Also, I was talking with someone this weekend, he made a statement that I'm like, yeah, you're right. He said, Christians are some of the biggest liars in the world. What he said before that was, talking about, I'll pray for you. And you walk away. You never pray for them. When will we stop and realize that there's something bigger in the moment? I'll pray for you right now. I'll pray for you right now. It doesn't matter where you are, what's happening, what's going on. Will we do what Jesus did and pray for them right now? The days of standing on a street corner and, with a, megaphone and all of those days are long past. well, Pastor Bill, why do you say that? Are you saying that we shouldn't proclaim the message outside these four walls? That's not what I'm saying at all. But what I'm saying is that your ability to speak into their life is really diminished when you get up there, and because what do they see? Oh, you want all the attention. You're trying to get all the attention. Plus, you risk being assaulted by some people, because right now the only hate speech that exists apparently is the truth. Is what happens, and so we risk assault. We risk possibly jail time if we say something. So those days are kind of behind us, and there's a new thing that we're seeing God doing, and we're getting back here to Jesus in Matthew chapter 9, preaching, teaching, and seeing signs and wonders happen. So how do we do that? 1 Peter 3:15. Instead, you must worship Christ as the Lord of your life. And if someone asks about your hope as a believer, always be ready to explain it. If someone came up to you later on today when you're at the marketplace, whenever you're doing something, they said, hey, there's something different about you. What is it? What are you going to tell them? Many of you would be like, I just got out of the shower and I smell nice. But that's not what they're looking at. They see something about you. Will you be able to tell them what it is? Why is that so important? Because people should see hope in our lives, not hype. It should not be this hype that is happening and, that we're trying to hype ourselves, or we're trying to hype Jesus, or we're trying to hype a church or hype an experience. But we should want to bring them hope for Jesus, who makes their sins wash away and makes their sins disappear. A hope that says you can be better. A hope that says you can do better. A hope that says there's more than the life that you're living, because Jesus came to give us life, and to give us life more abundantly. People in this world, they don't need a bunch of hype. We get that enough at ball games and everything else. People around us need hope. They need hope, people. We should be as quick as we possibly can to point people to Jesus. We should be as quick as we can. Now, sometimes that as quick as we can means weeks. Sometimes it means months. Sometimes it means years. But we should always want to point people to Jesus, because the hope of Jesus and what he has for them, that's all that they really need. Okay? There are people who are living for Jesus nowadays that will tell you that Jesus has given them more than what drugs ever could. That Jesus has given them more than what alcohol ever could. That drugs have given them, nothing but misery. Alcohol has given them nothing but hopelessness, but they found hope in Jesus. They found completion. They found wholeness. If we jump over to Matthew chapter 10, this is when Jesus is about to send the 12 to the lost sheep of Israel. And he says this in verse 7 and 8. And proclaim as you go, saying, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse lepers, cast out demons. You received without paying, give without pay. I don't know about you, but if we begin to see these things happen throughout this church family, we don't need to put anything on Facebook. We don't need to go live about anything. We don't need to, because people are going to say, people are getting set free. People are getting rescued. There are things happening there that we can't explain, and our explanation is it's only because of Jesus. I have been credentialed with the Assemblies of God now for 12 years. As I was unpacking some of my boxes from Ohio, that if you didn't see the video, I'm finally moving offices, so Pastor Ricky can get off my back, and so can Amy, and other people commented about time on Facebook, not to mention any names, Kathy Falcon. Whoops. But as I was cleaning out those boxes, I came across some messages I preached in 2006 and 2007. What was I thinking? I don't even know if any of that was theologically correct. I am not sure. But as long as I've been in ministry, ministry, here is what I am beginning now to really get a sense and an understanding of. It's possible that a less effective way to preach is from the platform, and a more effective way is outside the church. What happens up here will never be as effective as what happens out there. I'm not saying that this is not important, okay? I'm not going to stop preaching on Sundays, okay? I'm going to continue to do it. But many of you have heard me say, in the context of relationships with you, that I look forward to what happens off of this platform way more than what happens when I'm on this platform. Because to me, that's real ministry and that's real preaching whenever lives are being impacted in incredible ways, because we want them to know that Jesus is the hope for them. I think Jesus would tell us today, as you go to work, as you're going shopping, as you're playing, as you're fishing, as you're whatever you're doing, preach, witness, and point people to me every chance you get. That's what Jesus would tell us today. Looking on in verse 36, it says, when he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. Second thing that matters for the growth of our New Life Assembly family is the motivation of the growth. The motivation must be compassion. This must be the motivation. If you do not have any sense of compassion that the people that you rub shoulders with every single day, everywhere you go, many of them are going to die and go to a place called hell, you are not a compassionate person. That should bother you. It should bother you as you think about your friends and your family that don't know Jesus. That should bother you. Two psychiatrists occupied the same office, and one day there was a 70-year-old psychiatrist get on the elevator and a 40-year-old psychiatrist get on the elevator. And the 40-year-old looks at the 70-year-old and says, I don't understand how you can listen to all these hurting people all day and still look so great in the end, because he looked like he was just going on about his day, and the younger guy was just like, oh man, I'm just dragging. And he's wondering, how do you do this? How can you listen to everything that you hear in those offices? To which he replies, who listens? Some of you are like, yeah, I've been to those. I've been to those doctors. I've been to those people. But some of those people are in the church of Jesus today. Because we don't listen. We don't listen to what's happening around us. We're not looking at what's happening around us. We fail to listen or sympathize when people are hurting around us. But compassion is what motivated Jesus. Compassion, as defined by Webster, is a sympathetic conscientiousness of others' distress together with a desire to alleviate it. Are you like, oh, that's so sad? Or is there something about you that says, Jesus, help me in this. We need to, Jesus, help me to help them. Jesus, let me move and let me help and let me do something. Or is it just, oh, that's too bad? Unfortunately, many people in the church are like, oh, that's too bad. It would be a much different place if we understood compassion. It's more than just saying something in their situation. It's more than just feeling sorry for them. Compassion is what Jesus had for the city of Jerusalem in Luke chapter 19, as it tells us that he looked at the city and he wept because he had compassion over them and he knew what they were about to do and he was concerned about them and he wanted to alleviate what they were feeling. Preacher A.J. Gordon of the late 1800s once said, I have long since ceased to pray, Lord Jesus, have compassion on a lost world. I remember the day and the hour when I seemed to hear the Lord rebuking me for making such a prayer. He seemed to say to me, check this, I have had compassion upon a lost world, and now it's for you to have compassion. God has compassion on them. It's up to us to have the same compassion. That is all God is saying, is like, stop asking me to do it. I've done it. I had so much compassion. I sent my only son to die on a cross. And yet you, when you see someone in need, can't take 45 seconds out of your day to check on them or to ask them how they're doing. And he said, I made that sacrifice out of compassion. What are you doing out of compassion? God wants us to have compassion on people. He doesn't want to have them just stumble upon it. People should know that people who call themselves Christians, they're the ones that they can go to for compassion. So that people stop going to some book, so that people will stop going to some article, but that they will begin to know that they need to come to the church for compassion. They need to come to God's people for compassion. So we talked about the method and the motivation. Matthew chapter 9, 37, 38. Then he said to his disciples, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into his harvest field. What's the final thing that matters when it comes to the growth of this family? The means, the way, the disciples. That's us. That is those of us that have confessed Jesus as Lord and Savior. We are those disciples. Any company or person trying to sell an item will spend thousands of dollars a year in advertising. Thousands of dollars. But every expert knows that the best method of advertising is word of mouth. The best advertising, hands down, is word of mouth. One satisfied customer tells someone else about it, tells someone else about it, tells someone else about it. That's what the companies hope for. Sometimes it goes the other way. Okay, sometimes the advertising is advertising that they don't want, and it's the bad advertising, and it's the bad experience and those things. Whenever I worked for the last Culligan dealer that I worked for 5 years, they had a philosophy that you will do better for our company when you use our product. So everyone who got a job at Culligan Water, whether you were a route driver, office personnel, manager, salesperson, whatever, you got Culligan equipment in your home at no charge to you. So you got a Culligan water softener and a Culligan reverse osmosis in your home and no charge to you. Why? Because they knew that we could better talk about the product that we're using to better build the brand and to build for Culligan. Because they understood that whenever we began to use, listen, I'm going to tell you that the people who were closely connected to Amy and I don't think I sold any of them reverse osmosis, but Amy did, okay? Because she talked about it over and over. But Culligan understood that if we use if we use the product, that we will engage the product and we will rave about the product. But what about in our case, and the product is Jesus? Are we really sharing Jesus with people? Are we really telling people about who he is and what he's done in our lives? Or is it something that we just come to on a Sunday, maybe occasionally on a Wednesday, maybe occasionally on a life group, maybe occasionally, we'll switch the radio and we just occasionally will just use Jesus for whatever's happening there. If we truly believe in Jesus and we truly believe in New Life Assembly, we must tell people about both of them. Tell people about Jesus first. Tell them about Jesus first. Listen, your role is not to be like, well, Pastor, I'm going to invite them to church and then they're all yours. There you go. No, that's not how it works. That's not how any of this works. You have to tell them about Jesus first. Well, Pastor, I'm just not sure what to tell them. Tell them about the hope. Tell them about what he's done for you. Tell them about how he is there for you every single day. It is so easy to tell people about Jesus, and then we tell them about the church. God expects current believers to enlarge his kingdom by telling of the great things he has done, is doing, and will do in their own lives and their church. As we do use social media because we do believe that it's a great platform for us to be able to share great things that God's doing. As we're doing this, here is the thing, church, that I want to challenge some of you on. And for some of you, this doesn't matter because you're not on Facebook or you don't do these things. But here is one thing that I have noticed within my last year. And if you want to come up to me and ask if I was talking about you, then you probably already know that I am. So don't even come to me and ask. Okay? But some of you will share more posts of other products and other things that you don't really even know if they're true, more so than you will share the post of this church. How much better could we get the word out by word of mouth or word of Facebook if we're sharing the things that are happening on there? We see on average maybe 2 or 3 shares from what happens on New Life Assembly. 1 or 2 of those is usually myself or Pastor Ricky. Okay? We have about, 50 some different families on a regular basis that will come here. So we should be seeing almost that many shares on Facebook. If you're here and you like our Facebook page, you should be sharing it. That's just one way to share the word of mouth. Yeah, but, Pastor, I got to share about those essential oils. Ooh, you will not believe. Jesus will do more than essential oils ever will. Okay? Yeah, but I got to share this post about that politician and what they said. Listen, you don't even know if they really said that. It just sounded good to you. And Jesus is up there like, wow, if only you would just share more of me as much as we do those posts. I'm going to get back to my notes now, okay? With growth comes people. More people to serve others. Jesus charged his disciples to pray for more workers. To pray because he said the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Listen, if you wonder why aren't people rushing in these doors, that's because not everyone is in a place to serve them. So there's a good way to get involved by going online and filling out a place for you to be able to serve. God is not going to begin to bring people in here until we as a church are able to accommodate them. Okay? He is not going to do that. So this is so powerful that the way that he's going to do this is through us. Are you praying for the team that you serve on? Those of you that serve in kids, church, and nursery, are you praying for the other people on your team? Those of you that share wherever you're sharing, are you praying for those people? Are you praying for others to get involved and others to get engaged? Listen, growth is inevitable if the body, the church, is healthy. We need to get to a more healthy spot before we will see the growth that many of us long to see. We're not there yet. God's working on getting us there. Perhaps that growth is going to be some marginal growth. Perhaps it'll be maturity. Perhaps it'll be wisdom. But there will always be growth when we as a body are healthy. There will always be growth that comes and that happens. But at the same time, what do we need to watch out for? We need to watch out for disease in the church. We need to watch out for those things that will cause this body to become unhealthy. What am I talking about? Division, dissension, arguing, fighting. Those are the things that we're talking about. Whenever we become a church and a people that do not extend grace to people, that's whenever, however we are progressing health-wise, we will begin to see disease and to see other things happening within our bodies. So New Life Assembly, if you want to see God do some great and incredible things in our church, we have got to put these things into action and understand the method, the motivation, and the means so that the New Life Assembly, our family, can grow in a way that God wants it to grow, that we all long for this family to grow.